Morning, everyone. We will call this meeting to order at 10:01 a.m. Central Time. First order of business, I would like Tony Slagle to come lead us in both pledges.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Tony. Next agenda item is discussion, possible action to excuse any commissioner that's absent. Looks like everybody is here, so no motion needed. Opening remarks. Wow, I love the gallery. That is awesome. I just hope the room does not shift too far this way. We do have chairs on the other side, okay? You can get up to 4 hours CE for attending the meeting. That was one of the changes we made last year. You must stay for the entire meeting, sign in, sign out. We've got a full agenda, 420-something pages, excluding some supplements that have been emailed and received as late as, I think, Friday. Some of the things we're going to talk about today is broker lawyer has recommended some proposed changes, and I know this is probably going to be said 2 or 3 times. Proposed changes, not adoption, that will be proposed out for public comment. I think we should probably come back in November again and maybe talk about it and look at adoption at that time. But these are proposed changes. We have a report on the Sunset Advisory staff report, and then the agency has been really busy. You know, summer is supposed to be kind of the slow time for everybody to enjoy themselves. Believe me, TREC has been extremely busy, especially the last couple weeks with advisory groups meetings and broker lawyer and the board meeting and everything. So staff has really worked hard this summer, and we appreciate that. Now, the bad news. Deputy Executive Director Tony Slagle is retiring, okay? I've known Tony for probably not as many years as some of you, but I've known him for a long, long time, and he has always been a true asset to not only this agency, but the goals this agency has set and has been implemental in getting it done. He is probably the only staff member at TREC that has a piece of corrugated stainless steel tubing in his office. And I think Lee actually gave that to him, okay? So those two might be the only people who have actually ever seen corrugated stainless steel tubing in this office. And Tony, thank you, and we'll certainly say thanks later, but I appreciate all you've done. I came in 5.5 years ago, and we sat in some really tough spots at the Sunset and nominations and everything, and you were there right there with me, so thank you. Thank you for everything you've done to move this agency forward. Y'all give me my hand. We have some appointments to make. We need to appoint some people to the Education Standards Advisory Committee, and I've asked Commissioner Bernstein, Commissioner Russell, and Commissioner Brown to help on that process. The applications will be sent in. They will look at the applications. They will, I use the word scrub. They don't actually scrub them, but they'll scrub the applicants, and they will bring their recommendations to the commission for appointment to ESAC, Education Standards Advisory Committee. We also need to appoint, I believe it's 1 public member to the Texas Real Estate Inspector Committee. I've asked Commissioner Lerner and Commissioner Hartgraves to assist me on that, and I've asked them because they attend most of the inspector committees, and I don't think you should be fully vested as a commissioner unless you have served as a liaison to the inspector committee, okay? And I'm also going to ask Chair Lee Warren to also sit in that process to make sure we get a public member. And I think that's one of the most important things we do as a commission is finding the people to sit in those advisory committees, especially when it comes to the public member. Because a public member comes in with theoretically no knowledge, but we need them to have enough knowledge to be engaged and be involved in the decision making and not just a resume builder. So we'll put that together for the Texas Real Estate Inspector Committee. We'll go ahead and start with some staff reports. First staff report is actually from the Education Standards Advisory Committee, and that's Chair Bill Stedham. Bill?
Good morning. We met on July 8th, both in person and via Teams, and we reviewed requirements for Principles 1 and Principles 2 in Law of Agency, and we've recommended some changes after considering the public comments, and those changes will be considered today at the meeting later on. Our next discussion considered the proctoring requirements for qualifying courses and whether or not they are overly burdensome. Currently, qualifying course exams must be proctored by a provider, facility, or staff, or a third-party person or vendor acceptable to the commission. We've asked staff, to draft a revised rule language, and we will consider that revised rule eliminating the proctoring requirement at our next meeting to bring forth to you. ESAC also considered the rule requirement for students to display their photo ID on camera when participating in an online course. These are live courses such as webinars, and out of concern for student security, ESAC asked staff to consider ways that the providers can verify the student identity and present a draft rule change to the committee at the next meeting. Our next ESAC meeting will take place at 10 a.m. on October 7th at TREC headquarters. Do you have any questions?
Any questions for the Education Committee? Okay, thank you very much. Next up will be Ty Williams. He will give us a report on the Broker Responsibility Advisory Committee. Good morning, Ty.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to be here this morning, and I do appreciate it, and I appreciate your time as well, Commissioners. The Broker Responsibility Advisory Committee held its meeting on July 18th. As I'm sure you're aware, for quite some time, for years actually, we have been looking at the education requirements and experience points requirements for brokers' licenses. A few months back, we requested for public comment on this exact topic. And let me tell you, license holders delivered. We received over 42 pages of comments, each holding multiple emails, comments, and what have you that were sent in to the commission. We reviewed those comments and a few takeaways that we received from reviewing those as we saw them. And I thought it was interesting because it was all over the map, but there was one really vast majority comment that we saw throughout the entire 42 pages. License holders did not want us to lower standards for getting your broker's license. That was the vast majority of the comments. The other one that was very interesting was they didn't want us really looking at lowering any standard for experience points either. So they really wanted to see brokers have more experience before going out into the field. I thought it was very interesting to see these comments, and I loved the passion and some of the verbiage that people put into them because it really gave us a sense of how they really felt. I would say the next thing, we reviewed all the education overall, and currently, if you have a bachelor's degree or higher, the 630 hours of related education are satisfied to get your broker's license, regardless of what the degree is in. And in our discussion, in our last meeting, we are strongly leaning towards recommending only awarding credit for real estate related education and eliminating blanket credit for those degrees that are not related to real estate. We have not finished our discussion on these items yet, so there's no recommendation to be had today. But I wanted to let you know that that's where we stand at this point in time. We also discussed a written disclosure requirement for buyers and for a seller when an individual intends on engaging in wholesaling, most specifically license holders. We're going to recommend the Broker Lawyer Committee consider contract changes / disclosure / acknowledgement form related to this written disclosure. The idea is something like an IABS for wholesalers. I just think it's better for transparency and to make sure that people understand what they're getting into when they're signing a contract with a wholesaler, especially a licensed wholesaler. Our next meeting will be held on October 15th, and I once again want to thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, I'm here.
Any questions? Okay, I've got one. As far as the degree, TREC does have a list of classes that they will give credit to. So, I mean, even if you have a degree in something really bizarre like criminal justice, like myself, if you've had some of those core classes,
get credit
they can count toward. So it's not just the degree, it's what classes are taken to meet that degree.
100%.
Okay.
And Chair, that's exactly what we want to make sure. We want to keep those courses in that course list that we already have in place. We want to make sure that stays and continues. We just don't want to give blanket credit for every degree.
Right, and those classes are spelled out on the website. General Counsel Vanessa Burgess.
But your degree currently would satisfy the requirement.
Right.
But then you're right, there's also an additional list.
To look at what classes are there, not necessarily the degree.
Right, but your actual, separately, your degree currently would just satisfy without us walking through the courses taken.
Okay, very good. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Chair Lee Warren, Texas Real Estate Inspector Committee. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm going to want that CSST back, Tony. I want that pipe back. The Inspector Advisory Committee met on July 15th here at TREC. One of the items on the agenda was to move the Texas practicum from its current rule placement to another to further clarify that the practicum is not coursework, but a requirement that does not require a licensed education provider to complete. The practicum can be taught by professional inspectors that meet the proper criteria, similar to the criteria needed in order to be a sponsoring inspector. The practicum was intended to be done on-site and not virtually. An on-site supervised inspection provides much better learning opportunity for the prospective inspector going through the training. Keep in mind, this does not prevent someone from applying to be an inspector or an existing inspector from taking a virtual course to enhance the knowledge that they already have. There's nothing that prevents an inspector from accumulating more than the minimum 32 hours of CE during the renewal period. The SOPs are still currently under review, and it's really early in the process. We are encouraging inspectors to get involved in the process early and often to ensure that any recommended changes to the SOPs have the proper amount of time to be considered. We're still getting a good number of disciplinary actions regarding inspectors using the wrong inspection form. The current 7-6 form has been required for over 2 years now. We're trying to get reminders out there to the community of inspectors to ensure that they are making sure that they are using the right form. Education and Exams Division reported that the approval time for CE courses has been cut dramatically in the last few months. This has been a concern for some time and was brought up at recent meetings. That department has been working hard to get those approvals done faster, and I'm greatly appreciative of their efforts to make that happen. As you've already heard, Deputy Executive Director Tony Slagle has announced his retirement from TREC effective this month. I have been fortunate enough to have worked with Tony for the last 12 years that I've been on the IAC. I greatly appreciate everything he has done to assist in the relationship building between the Commission and the inspector community. Tony has gone out of his way to help make needed changes, last-minute revisions, long-term goals and tasks, and the occasional request or inquiry from a committee member that has increased his already full workload. From attending trade association meetings to accommodating the IAC and subcommittee meetings on countless occasions, Tony has made a positive impact within the inspector community that will be remembered for some time. The committee members, and most certainly myself, wish Tony the absolute best in his future endeavors. And with that, I will answer any questions.
Any questions for Chair Lee? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, next we're going to agenda item number 9, report by the Texas Real Estate Broker Lawyer Committee. John George will present those. We will also, after his presentation, take up agenda item number 24, which is a presentation of the proposed amendments and contract changes, and those are in your packet on page 301. All yours.
Thank you, Chair Kessner. And I'm excited to be here today. This is an issue that is near and dear to our hearts on the committee, and I have to give credit to this committee on how much time and effort they put into this. If you watch the meetings that we had over 11 hours of meetings between the last commission meeting and now, and that's just actual meeting time. These people are passionate, they care, and we want to get it right. And as you can expect, with what's changing in the market, there's a lot of differing opinions right now on what should be done. And it goes from doing nothing to doing a whole new addendum and new forms. And so I'll discuss today what we did in terms of the factors we looked at and where we ultimately ended up with a recommendation before you today. But I think it's important to set the stage of what we are and what we can do first. We as a broker-lawyer committee are comprised of 6 lawyers, 6 brokers, and 1 public member. The 6 brokers bring a perspective from the real-life practice. The lawyers bring it from the legal side. And then there's mix over with title and lending and different perspectives that are brought. And then we have the public member that brings from an outside perspective on here's what the forms look like to me, maybe as a consumer. And so the broker-lawyer committee drafts forms for this commission to consider. And this commission then considers approving those for use by the license holders in the public. And so it's important to remember this isn't only a license holder form. These are forms for the general public use. And we are different from Texas Realtors. This commission right here is not Texas Realtors, which is a trade association. In the trade association forms under our admin code, a rule from TREC allows trade associations that qualify to draft their own forms for use by their members. And we have the majority of license holders in Texas are Texas Realtor members. And so when you see these forms in use, there's a lot of confusion on, they believe it's a TREC form, something TREC did. But if you see a Texas Realtors form, TXR form, that is from the trade association. And they're not the only ones that can draft forms besides this committee, or approve forms besides this committee. Lawyers can draft forms for brokers for use by the agents and use by the consumers. There's different ways that forms can be developed. So when we talk about the forms today, we're talking about what TREC does. This isn't Texas Realtors. We can't dictate what Texas Realtors does, but we have to at the same time recognize it impacts the practice, right? We're not bound by it. We're not subject to the rules. We're not part of the lawsuit as TREC out there, but at the same time, it's a real world practice that we're living within that we have to account for. And so I'll get into those materials today. I have to say personally, recognize the passing of Mary Lou York 2 nights ago. She was one of I worked with her for over 10 years, and she informed a lot of what I consider on this committee. It's a great loss to the real estate community and to me personally, but I just wanted to recognize her here today. So what we did between the last commission meeting and now, we asked the public or the license holders for feedback, and we put out 6 different requests for feedback, or 6 different items. And those items were a statement that the broker-lawyer compensation is contained just in a separate agreement, add language that is just somewhere else, not in our contracts. Add the farm and ranch style language, which if you recall, the farm and ranch is the only of our 6 contracts that has an enforceable agreement or a ratification agreement in there that the agents sign. The agents don't sign any other contract that we have. And we'll get into the reasons why in a second for that. Another one that we have in the farm and ranch is where the buyer and seller can pay directly at the bottom. So we have ratification at the top of the last page for agents, and then for buyers and sellers at the bottom to make agreements. We also asked about seller concessions. Right now in our current contract in paragraph 12, there's a definition of buyer's expenses. And it doesn't say concessions, but that's what we use kind of as a general term. It's contributions. In buyer's expenses, that defined term doesn't right now include buyer's agent compensation. And so most agree that it is not included in that, and there's confusion among lenders and difference of opinions on that topic. We also discussed adding a whole new put out there, do we add a whole new subparagraph in paragraph 11 for contributions or concessions specifically for buyer agent compensation? And the last one, which was just very sensible, is remove MLS language from the contract. There's a reference right now to MLS in the commission disclosure. And recall, our current forms at the end in page 10 is just an informational disclosure. It's non-binding broker to broker. It lists an amount in there, But historically, by the numbers in residential transactions, the MLS established the broker-to-broker contract. We as TREC have never published a buyer's rep agreement, never published a listing agreement. We haven't published a broker-to-broker agreement outside the farm and ranch in at least my 8 years on this committee. And so what we're looking at now is the market is confused. There's a lot of new forms. There's a lot of language out there with different commentators on this lawsuit and its impact. And these new forms are coming out by the trade associations that are having an impact. And they're confusing even for the most detailed lawyers that are down in this. Every time I go to these forms, I have to look at the numbers and try to remember that. So we have to recognize the public's confused. The license holders are confused. And what can we do? And so I really wish there was a magic wand that we can just say, here's a very simple, let's put everything on one page and everybody agree to it. And it discloses every last part of the deal. But as you'll see in a second, there's issues with that. There's issues with confidentiality, with business practices, with concerns that came up. And to jump to the end of the story on the recommendations today, we're making a recommendation to take the first step, recognizing this may not be the last step, and it may not be the best step. But after all these meetings, we had votes that were 6 to 7, or vice versa with whatever our quorum was. One vote changed it. And then we all changed our mind multiple times. So know that what you have today is a result of a lot of hard work and a lot of detailed analysis of this. But we recognize this, at least we believe it's a first step that we could unanimously agree on. And then we can see what the market does coming up and then potentially make additional changes as we go forward. So the three big pillars, to let you know what we looked at, was clarity and disclosure to consumers and license holders. Our statutory directive on this committee is to reduce controversy, protect consumers, and to make these as clear as possible. And so they know the economics of the deal going in up front, both the buyer and the agents. Not delaying transactions because of disputes, right? Disputes can arise that ultimately can delay transactions to impact consumers. And license holders largely aren't lawyers, and consumers aren't lawyers. So we need to keep this language simple and understandable in the actual practice. As I talked about earlier, the broker-to-broker agreements is what is creating a lot of confusion out there right now. And we haven't established those agreements. But one of the concerns, the easy solution that sounds easy, put everything on a page. This is what the person's paying the listing broker, what they're paying the buyer's broker, what pocket is coming out of, whether the buyer or the seller. But then you start getting into other concerns of, well, then I'm disclosing my private business practice as a listing broker. And my competition is going to see exactly what I'm charging. And if that goes through with an offer, then it's out there for others to see what's being offered. And then you wrap into some of the concerns of the lawsuit, which is obviously a whole separate discussion of, well, then that gives the knowledge of what people are being charged. And does that go back to a standardization of rates instead of based upon the actual value of services provided? And so you have all these concerns in what seemingly is a simple solution. And there's a lot on the committee that still would like to see an addendum, at least with some information, maybe not all of it, but that's some of the things we looked at. The next one is lenders and appraisers. How will they know, at the value forms? And right now it's a whole new world for them and having to pick up the phone to call to find out the actual details of deals. And how can we make that clear in our contracts to help facilitate that part of the real estate transaction? So what we ultimately are recommending to the committee today is adding to paragraph 12 and adding to the seller contributions that are in paragraph 12. And right now, in the current forms, it has in the paragraph that a seller will contribute up to a certain amount for buyer's expenses that do not include expressly buyer agent compensation. Recognizing some sellers may not want to pay for buyer agent compensation. We discussed at length the idea of just lumping it together in a definition so it's one blank. But we ultimately said because the sellers may not want to contribute for that specific purpose, we moved it to a separate subparagraph. And so the recommendation you have is to update to allow the seller, if they want, and to negotiate to contribute up to a certain amount for buyer agent expenses. In past meetings, you had a recommendation from the committee in the materials to remove the farm and ranch language. And that was based upon the assumption we were going to do something more than we're recommending today. So we put that back into the language in the forms before you. So that practice that part of the community is used to can continue. But at the same time, the community that were not Texas realtors, not members of NAR, didn't have access to MLS to make these broker-to-broker agreements to begin with. And they got by with the existing forms. They worked out the deals. They picked up the phone. So we believe there's still that same vehicle to use, whether you're a Texas realtor with the forms that they have, whether you're not a Texas realtor and you're going over the old practice, that it has worked. And yes, can it be better? Absolutely. And we're driving for that solution, trying our best to figure it out. But today, we believe providing an option for the seller to pay the fees directly through contributions takes a step forward. And I will say there's different opinions on all these topics and fiercely, held opinions on a lot of this. And so I'm here today to answer any questions you have on that, knowing this is not an easy topic, and just know that we're trying our best, and this is the best first step that we could present to you today.
Any questions? Okay, I believe Abby Lee will be up next and might not run off too far. And then we have a public comment on this also after.
Okay, great. Good morning, Abby Lee, Deputy General Counsel for the record. So I'm going to present Agenda Item 24, which is discussion and possible action to propose amendments to 22 TAC Chapter 537. In the interest of time, the specific sections up for proposal are included in your materials and listed on the agenda. So I'm going to do the formal rules presentation. At the end, I'm happy to answer any questions, but you've got the true expert here as well who can answer. All right, so the proposed changes apply to all contract forms unless otherwise specified. And so when I talk about a paragraph, I'm talking about the 1 to 4, but it applies equally unless I say otherwise. So paragraph 4 is the first change you'll see. It's amended to add the term geothermal to the definition of natural resource leases as a result of the 2023 law change that stipulates property owners own the geothermal energy below the surface of their land and can drill or produce that energy and associated resources. Next up, to be consistent with a recently updated TDI, Texas Department of Insurance procedural rule, paragraph 6C1 is amended to include the option of providing the T47.1 declaration, which actually does not need to be notarized, in lieu of the T47 affidavit when the seller furnishes the buyer furnishes the buyer an existing survey. In lieu of providing a no survey option, paragraph 6C2 is amended to read buyer may obtain a new survey instead of buyer shall, and adds that if the buyer ultimately fails to obtain the survey, the buyer does not have the right to terminate the contract under paragraph 2B of the third party. Because the survey was not obtained. Next, we have a new paragraph, 6E11, because Texas law requires a seller to provide a buyer a copy of any mold remediation certificate issued during the 5 years preceding the sale of the property. That new paragraph is added to provide information regarding this requirement in all contract forms except the unimproved. 6E12 is modified to add specific examples of the types of notices that should be listed in the paragraph, and to add a caution that seller's failure to provide the required notices may provide buyer with certain remedies, like the ability to terminate the contract. For consistency with that paragraph and with applicable statutory requirements, paragraphs 6E, 4, 7, and 9 are similarly amended to remove references to a separate related addendum. Paragraph 8B, this may have been mentioned already, is changed to add a statement that broker's fees are not set by law and are negotiable. You've heard a summary already of the changes to paragraph 12, so I won't rehash those. We've also made conforming changes to the amendment to contract as well. Paragraph 20, the title of paragraph 20 is changed to federal requirements from federal tax requirements. And in the Farm and Ranch, in paragraph 20B, information has been added regarding the obligations related to the Federal Agriculture Foreign Investment Disclosure Act. You've heard about the changes to the broker information page on some of the contracts, except for Farm and Ranch. And then in the third party, switching gears now, changes made to ensure that the buyer is terminating appropriately. Paragraph 2A has been changed to require that both a notice of termination and a copy of the written statement of the lender's determination, like you find currently in paragraph 2B. The language in paragraph 2B is modified because the language related to notice of termination timing was different than in other contract provisions and was causing some confusion. Finally, a smaller change, requirements in paragraph 4 is made singular, and a conforming change is made to a paragraph citation. We next have the condominium resale certificate. It is amended to conform with the statute. Paragraphs K and L now conform with section 82.157 of the property code. In the unimproved, paragraph 3D is amended to include the same sales price adjustment language as the farm and ranch contract. There was a missing dollar sign that's been added. And then we've got out of concern and confusion about improper use of paragraph 11 of special provisions by license holders, the addendum for backup contract has been modified to provide more clarity on timing and payment of the earnest money and option fee by incorporating similar language from paragraph 5 of the contract and by addressing timing and payment of additional fees. The last form is a new form. The committee drafted a new addendum for Section 1031 exchange that allows the seller or buyer to disclose an intent to use the subject property as a 1031 exchange and includes a statement that the parties will reasonably cooperate with each other. Providing this as an addendum rather than in the contract allows the party to use it when applicable without causing unnecessary confusion. A reference to the new addendum is also added to paragraph 22 of the contract. Therefore, the staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the commission to submit the proposed amendments and new rule to 22 TAC Chapter 537 and the forms adopted by reference as presented, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for proposal to the Texas Register for publication and public comment.
I do have a public comment on agenda item 24. Alicia Austin. She's with Homes and Hills, Texas Realtors.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. On
I'm
behalf
going to limit you to
of-
3 minutes, okay?
Oh, yeah, it won't be that long. So on behalf, first I want to thank the Broker Lawyer Committee for all their work. I don't know how they sat in that room for that many hours discussing this. I did watch the whole thing. I had to take a break watching it on video. I had gotten a lot of requests from my students. I've taught these forms now, I think this week will be 47 and 48 times. And the new forms that we're all speaking about, that you are going to be potentially considering the new forms that from TREC that will come, the ones at Texas Realtors I've been teaching, and my students have implored the desire for farm and ranch. I appreciate the understanding further now of the antitrust issues and potentially putting all of those numbers in there, but if some sort of consideration can be taken, because a lot of the students are already using those, and since it's in one form, why can't it be in others, has been the concern we've had and the question. Thank you so much.
Very good. Okay, we have a staff recommendation.
I'd like to move that we, excuse me. I'd like to move the staff recommendation for the changes to the contracts and forms as proposed.
I have a motion by Commissioner Woodruff, second by Commissioner Brown. Any discussion? All in favor? Say aye. All opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Those forms will be proposed. Thank y'all. We'll go to agenda item number 10, a report on the executive committee. We met twice. During your handouts, page 9 and page 11, on June 13th, we met. We talked about staff. We talked about hold times. We talked about returns of emails. We also talked about the agency had a team building activity, which they did a video, which was really, really great. We also talked about possible changes because of the NAR settlement. Talked about the possibility of a move, and then we talked about moving the May meeting of 2025 tentatively. It's not set tentatively, but It's in erasable ink to San Antonio. Okay, so we did Houston, Dallas. May of 25 will be in San Antonio. July 10th, we met again. Again, we're constantly monitoring the emails, the calls, the hold rate, the drop call rates, the potential move. We also talked about comments on one of the rules we will look at adopting today on broker secession. And so that's what we talked about those 2 days. And again, full details is in your handout on page 9 and page 11. Okay, I'll answer any questions if you have so. If not, we will go to agenda item number 11, and that is report by Enforcement Committee Chairman Commissioner Hartgraves.
We only met once during this period, and there was a couple of items for discussion, requests for rehearing, which was denied. Vanessa, was there anything else that, no, that was it, yep. Yeah, they were both denied.
Okay, thank you. We will go to agenda item number 12, which is found on page 15. We will also, at the same time, take up agenda item number 30, 31, and 32. And Commissioner Pena will start this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The committee met on July 24th. Commissioner Brown, myself, and TALCB Chair Ms. Oates was also with us, as well as staff, and our auditors from McConnell Jones, who are with us today. Basically, we looked at the final installment of our audit plan for FY 2024, which included a review of our IT policies, procedures, as well as an assessment of our vulnerability threats of our IT practices. And so they looked at that. They will be presenting a little bit more on that as well. We also looked at the status of prior findings, which is a follow-up of what they found before, and it requires us to kind of address some of the issues that they brought up. We looked at the entire summary of what they looked at for the entire year in FY 2024 and complete their annual report of the internal audit as well. We also looked at the internal audit plan for FY 2025, which is based on a risk assessment model that pretty much takes into account where we see our biggest threats based on risk factors that we identified. And so they will be presenting on that audit plan as well. And that's pretty much it of the committee. This committee would also like to thank Tony Slagle as well. We're going to miss him. And so thank you, Tony, for helping us in everything that you do.
Okay, we will move to agenda item 30, 31, and 32. I believe that begins in your packet on page 413, and Representative for McConnell Jones will present. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Liz Myers with McConnell Jones, and we serve as your internal auditors. And with me is Chris Williamson, our Senior IT Audit Manager. There's several items, if we go to the next slide, that I'm going to be covering today. But before we start, I will start with information items, but I'd like to give you a little reminder of the difference between a finding and an improvement for opportunity, and also between an inherent risk and a residual risk. Okay, so a finding is an internal control weakness or a noncompliance with the required policy, law, or regulation, and in those, management must respond to the finding regarding how they will address the risk that was identified. An opportunity for improvement is an area, excuse me, where the internal controls are effective as designed, but they can be enhanced. And so these are just opportunities for improvement, trying to get you to best practices, more efficient, more effective. But the controls are working. Management does not have to respond to those. They don't even have to implement it. It's a suggestion, a recommendation. An inherent risk now is the level of risk that exists before any actions are taken to mitigate it, right? And this rating is assigned prior to any audit activities are done. A residual risk is an internal audit ranking of the remaining risk or likelihood of a negative event occurring after auditing the internal controls and processes in place. If controls are not effective, the residual risk would be higher than if they're working effectively. So an example, construction is inherently risky business, right? And so starting from the get-go, it's going to be a high risk. But a construction company can have a policy and procedures for the use of safety equipment such as safety goggles or glasses, safety belts, safety shoes or boots. They may even require everybody to go through training on a regular basis, like OSHA training, okay? Now, internal audit would come in behind and see, are those things actually happening and how effective are they? And that's where we get the residual risk from, after seeing all of that. Okay, hopefully that is clear now. So we'll go ahead and go on to the next page. And our first audit we're going to cover is the internal audit for information technology. And the objective of this audit was to ensure management's processes and controls are designed to comply with the Texas Administrative Code 202, which we refer to as TAC 202, implements effective cybersecurity measures, implement effective continuity of operations, effective manage network and system vulnerabilities identified through vulnerability scanning. And our audit scope period was September 1, 2023 to May 15th, 2024. And here for this one, the risk, the inherent risk in IT is always high. And after doing our audit, we felt the residual risk is still high. Next slide, please. So our control rating here is major improvement needed. And we had a total of 5 findings, 2 high, 3 medium, and 7 opportunities for improvement. Next slide, please. There is one recommendation or finding that we will not be presenting in this public forum, as it contains information that is deemed to present potential risk related to public safety, security, or the disclosure of private or confidential data. As such, it is a restricted confidential report that is exempt from the requirements of the Texas Public Information Act under the provision of the Texas Government Code, Section 552.139. Okay, next slide. So now we're going through all of the different areas with regards to the cybersecurity measures. Those were generally effective, but when we got to the compliance with the TAC 202, major improvement is needed, and we had some recommendations and opportunities for improvement on this one. On the next slide, with regards to continuity of operations. So this is like business resiliency, or I just went blank here. So on this one as well, there is major improvement needed. On this one, we had 3 findings that need to be addressed. And if you can go to the next slide, please. We have our recommendations on this slide as far as each of those findings. And if you can go to one more slide there. These are the opportunities for improvement. And I think we have one more slide on this one. Oh, that was it. The last one is an area that we cannot do in public. Okay? So the next audit is the external communications audit. And in this one, the audit was to assess the management controls and processes that ensure external communication strategies are meeting TREC's and TALBC's objectives. The external communications are reaching the intended audience, and the external feedback towards TREC and TALBC on social media and other communications are being monitored. And the scope here was from September 1, 2022 to December 31, 2023. The inherent risk here was high, but after the audit, we put the residual risk at low. If you go next slide, please. So the control rating we gave here was generally effective with 1 finding and 1 opportunity for improvement. And we also noted some best practices here that I wanted to call out. First, the open rates and click rates on emails exceed the industry average in a very positive direction. They do a great job here. And then the bounce rates, or emails that do not reach the intended target, are significantly below, i.e. better than industry average as well. And so what that means is that the messages are reaching their intended audiences. So that's another great thing. Okay, and next slide, please. And these were 1 recommendation, 1 opportunity for improvement, and the other 2 areas that we looked at, no findings, no recommendations. The next area is the follow-up on the audits. Now, this is something we have to do every year, and we look at all open findings from the previous years and verify where they are at. So for this one, for this year, we had 4 out of 5 open audit findings that were addressed completely. So when they tell us they're addressed, we go and audit and make sure it did address the issue. And there is one that is in process. And on that one, they're kind of in an unusual situation. It is systems called CAPS, and if you want to go to the next slide, you can. They are required, they had tried to hire an individual to do that. It's really difficult to find. I have other agencies that have similar issues with CAPS, and there's just a very limited number of people who can work on this system. What they have done, though, is they have reached out to the comptroller's office who takes care of CAPS, and they are working with them to address the issues that have been identified. So it is in progress, so it's a good thing. Okay? And I'm not going to go through the other issues because they all have been fully addressed. So now we go to the action items. The first is our audit charter, and the audit charter should be reviewed annually and signed off annually. And the purpose behind the charter is a formal document that establishes internal audit's purpose with TREC and TALBC, and our authority when doing these audits, reforming our audits, and our responsibility as well. And it also solidifies our position within the organization as far as what we can and cannot do. And then the charter is to provide a blueprint for how internal audit will operate and help the Commission affirm the value it places on its internal audit's independence. The charter should be reviewed by you annually and then signed off by the audit chair. And you should have a copy of this in your reports. And I am requesting approval for this internal audit charter.
Liz, question. Have we always had this internal audit charter in place, or?
There has been one, but it hasn't been updated annually, and the Institute for Internal Auditors has now made it required by us to provide it on an annual basis for approval and review.
Okay. I'll just let the Commission know that I did look at it and reviewed it and approved it as well, so.
Thank you. Okay, so next is the our annual independence disclosure statement. And on this one is similar to the charter, but in this one, what we're saying is we're documenting that our independence of the internal audit function with the purpose of providing transparency and assurance that audits are conducted objectively and without any undue influence that could compromise the integrity of our process. If any impairments should arise of the internal audit partner or any other internal audit team member in fact or appearance, it must be disclosed to the TREC commissioners and the executive director. And this is another one that I am asking for approval.
Mr. Chair, couple things. We need to adopt the internal audit charter, so we'll need a motion and approval for that, as well as their independence disclosure as well.
And that is agenda item 30?
Right.
Correct?
No, 32 charter, 31 is the plan. So you need a vote on each of those items.
She hasn't talked about the plan yet.
Right, but just when we get to the end,
Okay.
if you want to just go ahead and take those 2 items separately.
Yes.
For the approval.
Okay, very good.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, next is the internal audit plan, I believe. What you're seeing here on the slides is the risk assessments, or risk mapping that we did after the risk assessments. The one on the top was from FY23. The one on the bottom is from FY24. And you'll see there is a difference as far as what are considered the highest risk. And these can change from year to year. Okay, so with the next slide, please. After doing the risk assessments and meeting with the audit committee, it was determined that we would focus this year on the procurement function within financial services, which was one of the highest risks. And then additionally to that, we will audit the Public Fund Investment Act, or the PFIA compliance. And this is required by state regulations to audit every 2 years. So it's time. Any questions on, and then everything else are just required things that we do, such as the risk assessments, come to commissioners' meetings, et cetera.
I'd just like to say a couple of comments that the PFI audit is required every other year, and it is substantial undertaking with respect to our internal audit plan. It always takes up space within what we are trying to do. And so we had discussions in our audit committee with respect to available budget funds to address some of the larger items. And because that PFA is there, it kind of squeezes out a lot of the higher risk stuff that we would like to see. And so we did talk about when it comes to budgeting also, and perhaps have a cost sharing with the TALCB board as well in sharing some of those audit costs. And so I just want to make it known that I just want to be sure that we're applying the resources needed to do our audit requirements and address particularly the higher risk areas with respect to that. Certainly we are being diligent, and we are looking at what we need to, but I think there's an opportunity to maybe ratchet up a little bit more our internal audit function with respect to the area of coverage.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
So one last area, which is the annual audit report that we file on your behalf. It's due on November 1st. It's on the next slide, please. One more. Okay, and this is just an information again. We are required to submit it on your behalf by November 1st each year. A draft should be in your packages of what that looks like. It's a publication of the internal audit reports on that. Well, the mandated comments is that you do publicize the internal audit reports on your website. It also provides the annual internal audit plan status, and then the 2025 annual internal audit plan, and if there's any external audit services procured in 2024, and your policies with regards to suspected fraud and abuse. And that is it. So any questions, comments?
Any questions? Okay, on page 412 of your packet, agenda item 31, will I, motion to approve staff's recommendation?
So moved.
I got motion made by Commissioner Brown, second by Commissioner Pena. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item number 32, discussion and possible action regarding approval of the internal audit on page 419. Would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Pena, second by Commissioner Renee Harvey Lowe. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, as the chair, we are going to go back to agenda item number 13, and prior.
Sorry, I want to go back to her report. It's more towards staff. What do we, as an agency, have a plan to fix these vulnerabilities in a timely manner and get on it? What is our plan?
I think we're going to talk about that in the executive session. But for every finding, there was a management response that provides deadlines for when we will basically address the finding.
Yeah, if you look at the report, it talks about what management plans to do, and that's part of, and I was going to say, as part of my allocation of resources speech there, that another required item that happens every day is to look at what's going on with respect to follow-up of the comment. So every time we have a finding, there has to be a corrective action plan that we as a commission have to keep on top to make sure that they are being followed through. In this case, the one that she mentioned is a finding that's kind of a little bit out of our hands because there's a reconciliation between an outside agency and ourselves that requires special digging out of a transaction by transaction to ensure that the reconciliation process. Reconciliation, all it means is being in agreement, right? And they have some that we may have some that they don't have. And so it requires the use of a specialist to come in and kind of sort out what's causing those differences. And those differences, although not material, they may go up 1 month and then come down, and they're kind of doing this with respect to their numbers versus our numbers. And so we're working with a consultant to get that ironed out, and so that we balance out to the penny. Ideally, that's we should tie out to the penny.
Thank you.
Okay, we will do agenda item 13, report by Budget Committee, Commissioner Woodruff, and then we will go to agenda item 15, public comments, because we do have a public member here with a making a comment, and then we will wait on staff reports. Okay, Commissioner Woodruff.
Okay. We met, the Budget Committee met, I think twice, 2 or 3 times anyway, and there's been a lot of conversation this particular year around where we go from here. And because, there's several, things happening from a financial perspective. The big one is RAMP, which is the big capital investment item that you'll see if you look at the packet. And, going forward, then how do we handle what is an approaching kind of cliff that I guess in 26 around, funding. And, so we had a lot of conversation around that. But for 2025, it's, status quo as far as fees and that sort of thing. We did talk about in 26 the fee increases that are addressed here. And, I think that what you'll see is that, the revenue number is slightly lower than this year. Mostly because if you look at, the number of new agent applications that are coming in, that number is lower. And so there's a little bit of a give back from the COVID years, where if you look at the history, you'll see there was a big surge in licensee count from a lot more folks interested in becoming licensed. And that's starting to decline. The existing license renewal rate still in and around 80%. And so that seems to be holding, but there's just fewer people coming into the business. So in projecting that, you'll see the revenue slightly lower. Expenses, I think we dove into those quite a bit. There is a 3% merit increase in there, but, honestly, the agency does a pretty good job, real good job of managing, to the expense numbers that we have. And so the result of that is what you're seeing in the proposed 2025 budget. So I don't know how much more detail we want to get into, but
I think we have an agenda item a little bit later with a little more detail. Okay. So any other questions for Commissioner Woodruff on the budget? And we will look at the budget later in the meeting. Okay, let's move to agenda item number 15. We have a public comment by Charles Jones, broker. And good morning. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for your patience.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you very much for hearing me out. My name is Charles Jones. I have been a broker, agent, member of NAR, TAR, and local associations for 37 years. The main purpose of my visit today is to ask the Commissioners of TREC to forbid mandatory buyer's agency employment agreements, just as the Oklahoma Real Estate Commission did a few weeks ago. We have an association of competitors, NAR, creating mandatory rules that are not based in law, which will force the public to either sign an agreement they do not wish to sign, or be denied access to housing opportunities. If agents collude in this scheme and refuse to show homes to qualified people because consumers do not feel obligated themselves to a person they do not know, these agents will be violating the Fair Housing Law Act of 1968, which states that all people must be given equal access to housing opportunities, which means showings. In the TREC mandated education over the past several decades, we have been told that we as agents cannot refuse to show a house to any person who is qualified. So what happens if a prospective buyer or tenant will not sign a mandatory agreement? Is it TREC's position that agents should not follow the Fair Housing Act and refuse to show just because NAR made it a rule? Do we follow NAR's rules or do we follow the law? This rule is anti-competitive, discriminatory, and coercive. If agents are forced by NAR to break the law and to collude in anti-competitive behavior, or we will be heavily fined, We will have access to the MLS removed, which would prevent us from earning a living. So what should agents do? TREC should forbid MLSs from making any agreements mandatory between agents and the public. They should forbid any punishment of any agent that wishes to make their employment agreements voluntary. Even the framers of this rule know that this rule is problematic. As they state, the rule, in the preamble of the rule, unless inconsistent with state law, federal law, or regulation. Well, this rule is inconsistent with the law of contracts, as contracts must be voluntary. This rule is inconsistent with the Fair Housing Act, and by extension, this rule is inconsistent with the laws and regulations of the Texas Real Estate Commission and the state of Texas. This mandatory rule only protects NAR, the Association of Competitors. It does not protect the consumer, and it does not protect the individual agent. It forces a client relationship into the consumer if the consumer desires to have equal access to the housing inventory, but does not want to bind themselves to a particular agent. They have no recourse to this scheme. TREC must maintain the customer type of relationship if a consumer wishes this type of relationship. For clients that want an exclusive agency fiduciary relationship, they can freely enter into one. But once it becomes mandatory, it is no longer a choice, which puts all agents into a legal bind, as there will be no way to distinguish between those who are voluntarily enter into an agreement and then those who are coerced into a mandatory agreement. TREC must act to forbid this. Thank you for your time. Any questions?
And we thank you for your time, and we thank you for coming forward and bringing this. I think all of us in the industry are certainly juggling what's going on right now. And so we appreciate your input, and I promise you Broker Lawyer is certainly paying attention to it all. Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
My only question is, what do agents do? I mean, if we don't have an agreement because the buyer or tenant potential will not sign one, do we just refuse to show? And if we do, we are breaking the Fair Housing Law Act because we have to give equal access to everybody. So it's a legal bind that we should not have to be in. I think TREC, just as the Oklahoma Real Estate Commission did a couple weeks ago, ruled that these agreements cannot be mandatory. Of course, we all agree that they should be voluntary, and every agent should try to get a buyer's agent's agreement signed because it protects us as the agent. But to make it mandatory, you are forcing the public to sign things they may not want to sign just to have access to see the house. I think that's wrong. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Okay, we will go with agenda item 14. We'll start with Executive Director Chelsea Buckholz.
Good morning. Welcome back to Austin. I'm glad to have you here. I know this is a really crazy time of year. Among our staff, many of us sent children to school last week. Others are sending their school this week, later this week. I know many are moving college kids in, and there's a lot going on personally, and there's a lot going on at the commission. And I'm grateful for that. I wanted to give you just a few highlights, and then I'll comment on a few things that you'll see later in the agenda. First, I'll start with Tony Slagle. This is his last commission meeting with us, as we've mentioned previously. On Friday, he will retire from state government, and I think he's going to take a little bit of time for himself before he figures out what his next thing will be, but we can't let him leave here without celebrating him. So I'll say a few things, but I also wanted you to know that we'll be celebrating him on Friday afternoon with pie and punch, as one does for retirement parties. He was one of the first people I met at the agency when I became the general counsel for the commission, and he was deputy commissioner for the board and deputy executive director for the commission. I learned very quickly of his quirky ways. My first example of that was on my very first day. He declared that he was a vegan every other month. I'd never met an every other month vegan. I also learned just how knowledgeable he is of the agency and beyond. He could explain to me all of the moving parts, all of the nuances, who does what, how the board and the commission interact, what all these advisory committees do, and the differences between them, you name it, he knew it. So I quickly claimed him as a friend and was very grateful for all that he poured into me and into the agency. So a few things that I just have to highlight is that he was a significant driver to effect change during what was a very hard sunset review many years ago. He took a very deep dive into some of our challenges and he found solutions, namely, of course, the work he did on customer service. For many years, he applied his vast knowledge of the legislative process and helped the agency navigate session after session after session. He's been with us for 12 years, so by my count, he's done at least 6 regular sessions. He acted as a liaison for many of our advisory committees, focused a huge amount of energy, especially on the inspector committee. He became a trusted resource to them and has really earned the trust of many across all of the industries that we regulate. He also is a champion for consumer protection. He always has an eye towards consumer protection, asking how will these decisions affect the end user of those that we regulate? And I always appreciate that question. When I moved from general counsel to being executive director, it was easy to keep him where he was as a deputy on both sides. He taught me, he coached me all along the way, and I'm mainly just grateful for Tony's belief and his love of our agency. He works with his heart, and that was a motivator for me. So I look forward to continuing to claim him as a friend, and I can't wait to see what's next for him. But Tony, thank you. Also before you today, and less fun to talk about, are the numbers, the budget, at least for me. I'm not a numbers person, but I wanted to mention just one piece that is not in the budget that Commissioner Woodruff mentioned, and that is a potential fee increase. I am hoping and expecting to have a fee increase soon. But it is not included in the 2025 budget before you today. We've provided you with an option to see what it would look like with and without a fee increase, but I just kind of wanted to tell you where we were with that. Right now, if we do a fee increase, it is looking like it would be only on the renewal side, not on new applications. It would consist of $50 for brokers, $40 for sales agents, and $20 for inspectors every renewal cycle. So that's a 2-year cycle. This would generate about $1 million, a little bit more in revenue each year. And as you'll see by our numbers, that is needed in future years. But before you see that as a part of the budget, or, our fees are a type of a rule, so it will need to be a rule change. But before it comes to you as that, we need to get approval from the governor's office, and that process can take many months. And so we're talking about it informally, but it is formally with the governor's office for their consideration. And so once we get a go-ahead from them, I expect a positive result. Then on some unknown time frame, we will bring it back to you for your consideration, potentially as a modification to our 2025 budget or for 2026, depending on the timing. But as you can see from our projections for future years, we have essentially successfully depleted our balances. That was by design. It was a directive from the Sunset Commission as part of our sunset review process. So this is not a surprise to us. This is essentially a success. And we are moving to the next layer of that, which will be a fee increase so that we can continue to maintain the level of service and oversight that we currently provide. I mentioned sunset in the context of our major review many years ago, but we have just completed a sunset review for a very special purpose of reviewing all of the disclosures required of sellers. The staff report has been published on the Sunset's website. I believe you have seen a copy of that. And it provides no recommendations for change. This was a very seamless process. We will continue through the process this fall. There will be a hearing where I testify and we basically conclude the process, but I do not foresee there being any challenges to that process. We did submit our response to their report on Friday, which essentially said, yes, thank you, we agree. Thank you for working so hard on this report. But I, more than anything, want to just acknowledge the staff work to complete this review and to thank Vanessa and Abby and Summer for their work on this. Also Tony worked very hard, and also thank Sunset staff for their diligence. It's hard to dig deep and to figure out a subject matter of which you know nothing about, and they did that and did that very well. So may all reviews be as favorable as this one. Next, I wanted to mention RAMP. We've talked about that a little bit this morning. As you recall, this is the process of replacing our back-end database. And really, the back-end system that drives all of our internal work. We continue to make progress in all divisions, and I tell you that all divisions are involved. And our status is really different for each division and each group that's working on the project. Some groups are still in configuration because they were slower to start, just later in the schedule. Some are in validation, some are in automation, testing all along the way. We're working on the data conversion, which I have learned is quite possibly the most complex part of this project. We expect completion in spring of 2025. Our first completion date was fall of 2024. That is not happening. I'm fearful to set a new date just yet, but as soon as we kind of have an eye to the end, I'll set that date and we will keep you posted. Tom Watson, our director of IT, is here. He lives this every day. I'm pretty sure that he dreams about it at night. But if you have any technical questions, he can answer those for you. And then lastly, I'll end on a high note. We received 2 Arello Awards this season. One Education Award for the Legal Update 1 and 2 curriculum. Congrats to the writing team on that work, Jennifer Gruby, Jennifer Wheeler, our general counsels, worked very hard to draft that curriculum, and we're grateful for the whole writing team for that effort, and thankful for the acknowledgement by Arello. Additionally, Roy Minton, an investigator from our enforcement division, was named Investigator of the Year for the second time. And we are excited for that recognition based on an investigation of a specific case that he did. The timing of it is a little odd because Roy is leaving to go into business with a family member. And so we will accept that honor on his behalf at Arello. But we're really grateful for the work of our entire team, and it's especially fun when that work gets recognized. So congratulations for those 2 teams. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you have, and if not, these folks behind me have updates for the real work.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to finish with agenda item 14, but I just want to tell the people here getting CE, the next 7 people you see, they're instrumental to the agency being where they're at. I mean, the people over here, they're huge. But the next 7 people, from the last 6 years, our licensee supervision has went from 180,000 to almost 240,000, over a 30% increase. Our numbers are well, our education numbers are well, everything's doing good, and it's because these next 7 people you're going to hear, that's the backbone to our agency. This is our staff. So first up will be Robert Hood, Director of Customer Relations Division. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Robert Hood, Director of Customer Relations Division. I stand before you this morning to give you the status of the contact center. I will begin on page 23 of your meeting materials. This will be the contact center stats for June 2024. June was a great month for the contact center, with the overall hold time being 50 seconds.
Yeah.
Just under 14,000 calls were presented to the contact center, and 18 out of the 20 business days in June, we were below our 2-minute target. We processed our emails and phone calls with 18 customer service reps in June. The June comparison of calls between TREC and the board is consistent with 94% of our workload being TREC related and 6% being board related. Next on page 24, this is our 13-month comparison of calls presented to the contact center and the hold times for those respective months. Over the past 13 months, the contact center has fluctuated from a low 38-second hold time this past March to a high 1 minute and 40 seconds in December of 2023. This past July, our hold time was just over 30 seconds, and so far our hold time for August is about 30 seconds as well. Next on page 25, you will find the number of emails the contact center handled over the past 13 months. In June, 2,585 emails were processed, all within 1 business day of receiving them. On page 26, this is our fiscal year comparison of the monthly average number of calls we were presented each fiscal year with the average hold time. 10 months of data is reflected in this chart for 2024, and we're averaging about 15,000 calls per month with a hold time right at 1 minute. This will conclude the report for the Customer Relations Division. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? Commissioner Hargraves.
Are you fully staffed?
We are down 1 person right now.
Okay.
So we have 20 on the phones. We allotted 21.
Okay, good.
Other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Up next will be Jennifer Wheeler, Director of Education and Examination Services.
Good morning, Chair Kestner and Commissioners. Jennifer Wheeler, Director of Education and Exams, for the record. Before I begin my reports, I'd like to acknowledge a few team members and fellow staff members. As the Executive Director mentioned in her report, the 2024-2025 legal update courses were selected as the 2024 Aurello winner in the category of post-licensing education. We are particularly proud of these courses as they represent a new direction in which we develop the curriculum. Staff members who contributed to these courses include Jennifer Gruby, who's here today. Hey, Gruby. Ray Ruse, and those are our curriculum developers. Vanessa Burgess and Abby Lee, our general counsels. Summer Mandel and Sierra Pizarro as our communications powerhouse. This collaboration has resulted in a new and more modernized course book, PowerPoint, and inclusion of engagement exercises. You also have before you later today the content for the 2025-2026 Broker Responsibility course. And if you think the new legal update courses are good, wait till you see this upcoming BRC. Instructor trainings will begin in October and registration is currently open. If you are interested in teaching the new BRC, you can go to the Texas A&M Real Estate Center website to register. And those are the 2 big updates I have. If you don't have any questions, I'll move on to reports. Okay. So the reports begin on page 27 of your materials, and I'm sure you've all had a chance to look at them, so I'm going to just give you some highlights. As you know, we're getting ready to wrap up this fiscal year, and with 2 months left of reporting to account for, the education team is on track to have another substantial year. Over the last several years, we've experienced an upward trend in pretty much all provider and course application types. The only area where you will see a dip is in the qualifying courses approved this fiscal year. However, the number of applications we have approved this year more closely corresponds to the number of qualifying courses we approved in 2020, and we operate on a 4-year renewal term. The real upswing continues to be CE providers and courses. If you include the data I just received from July, which is not a part of your materials, we have already exceeded FY 2023 in both categories. We have recently rebooted our cross-training efforts, and as a result, we have gained efficiencies in our processing times, as some have mentioned in earlier reports. I'm proud of the cohesiveness of our team and how they work together to achieve team goals. This concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up will be Denise Sample, Director of Licensing.
Good morning, Chair and
Good morning.
Commissioners. Denise Sample, Director of Licensing, and on page 33 of your materials is where we can start with the licensing reports, and this is data through June of 2024. So you'll notice there is a slight dip, and we've been tracking on real estate applications received, and Commissioner Woodruff mentioned this when he was talking about Budget Committee report. This amounts to about a 10% dip in application counts for real estate compared to this time last year. At the November meeting, that's when you'll see the full fiscal year reports presented, and we'll have a better picture of how we ended the year. So if you move on to, let's see, the next page is a carryover. It's got the easement and right-of-way registrations, applications, and then the new business entity registration applications. There's not a comparison because that's the one that launched in January of this year. And so we've received almost 1,800 applications through the end of June. So it's obviously still quite a popular registration that people are seeking out. The next page of the reports shows the the renewal activity. And again, just to echo what was previously said about in the budget report, is a slight dip in the renewal rates. So the counts are higher, but the renewal rates have dipped a little bit lower, and those numbers are what drive revenue projections and the forecasting. So you'll see them broken out by license type there, and this is a comparison from fiscal year 22 to fiscal year 24 because all of those licenses are on a 2-year cycle.
What is the renewal rate?
The renewal rates are in bold below each of those numbers there. So for example, sales agents, 2 years ago were at 81.42% renewing, and this fiscal year is 78.32% renewing.
So they're right around the 80%.
And that's historical. They did have a spike during COVID, and now we're seeing them dip slightly.
Okay.
The next report is license and registration counts. And this is a 13-month comparison broken down by license type. I do want to point out in your materials there is a typo where the business entity registrations, kind of in the center of the page, it was duplicated the May and the June numbers. So the June end of month total of business entity registrations was actually 1,173. So that'll be corrected in the materials going forward.
Question.
Yeah.
So we talked about the application rates going down and the renewal rates going down as well, right? But if you look at the schedule, on August, 1 year ago, on August 2023, we were at 231, and then at the end of June, we're at 232, right? And so although the renewals are coming down and the applications are coming down, we're still maintaining a level. In other words, our membership base has basically plateaued, meaning that although the renewals are coming down, the applicants, the new applicants are kind of covering that shortfall, right? So what I'm saying is overall, the net membership base is not coming down.
Correct. The license holder count is holding steady.
Okay, so we project that our member base, which derives and drives our budget numbers for the coming year, to stay relatively flat. Yes?
That's what's trending. If you look at that bottom, the percent change row,
Yes.
that's a fairly new metric that we've added there, and it appears that it's holding steady. And I do want to mention on the renewal report, which was on the previous page, the raw numbers are higher because we have a 30% larger license holder population. So we show you the raw numbers of renewals as well as the renewal rate to give you the full picture.
Okay. And since it's a 2-year cycle, we may not have seen, I'm going to, say that it won't be flat when we meet this time next year. But, again, that stands to.
I don't agree with that.
Speculation, but just based on what's really happening out there. So anyway.
Any other questions before I move on?
No, I'll disagree, but we'll get there when we get there when they look at the budget.
Well, he's had his crystal ball a lot longer than you, okay, I'm telling you. I only have one thing on the total license holders and registrants. The business entity registrations, I just wish we could rename that something than business entity, because I think I get confused with that and the regular business entity. But anyway, it's minor, but it's not a business entity.
We are very careful not to call it a license, and it's not a broker license. So, I can probably.
But maybe onto the active business entity broker's license, maybe put license up there. And anyway, just not a big deal. Just, yeah.
I will share that it is confusing even for us in the licensing division. Which one are we talking about? Are we talking about a broker license or the new registration?
Right,
so that is helpful feedback.
Okay. All right. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Commissioner Lerner.
I know I've talked about this before, and it's really not you. I just wanted to address everyone because I think it's important, and you're talking about the renaming. And right now, we're using the word DBA, alternate name, and whatever. And if you look online, it's all over the place. DBA is a legal word. It means something legal. If we're not going to require that DBA to be registered, or we're not going to check on that DBA, then we need to call it like TREC register name or something else, because we are deceiving the public. We have to do what's right, and we're not checking DBAs, we're not checking alternate names. And when I looked the other day, I believe alternate names are like Jen for Jenny, or Jennifer, or Bill for William. People are putting weird business names in there and everything else that just don't match up to anything. And I don't think we have any oversight, and we really need to figure this process out.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Sure.
Yeah. Sorry, I lost my place. The last report, sorry, I apologize. The next page is the graphical presentation of the license holder counts by license type. And then the last page has our application processing time. So you'll see, as a reminder, our goal is 14 days, and that's the cumulative total of how long it takes licensing to provide a response to an applicant, and does not include the time it takes an applicant to pass the exam or to, submit any documents or education that we've requested. And we're well within that metric on all the application types. And if there's no questions, that concludes my report.
Application processing times are incredible. Absolutely. I mean, from the time a sales agent submits their stuff, 4.67 days later, they can take the test. That is outstanding. Good job.
Thank you.
All right. Thank y'all. All right. Michael Malloy, Director of Enforcement. Good morning. Congrats on the award.
Oh, thanks. It's all Roy there. Sad we're missing, he'll be leaving, but I think him winning it second time is a dedication to his passion for consumer protection, and we wish him best as a next venture. So, good morning, Mike Malloy, Director of Enforcement. So I have a few things to highlight from my report. So let's begin with the case status report, which you'll find on page 39. Year-to-date, broker and sales cases are up 7% from this time last year, and the division has closed 3% more cases than they have opened. And our continued efforts in efficient reduction of our case resolution has resulted in a 22% decrease in overall cases since this time last year. Our cases overall have been consistent for the most part throughout the whole year, so I'm going to predict that we'll probably open about 6,000 cases this fiscal year. But I'll report on that more when we meet in November. Moving to the next report on page 40, 99% of the cases are within 1 year. The 0 to 6 month range, it is their highest percentage in the past decade, accounting for 96% of our cases within that time range. And the 2 cases that are within the 12 to 8 month range have since been closed or resolved. So as of 2024 of July this month, or last month, the average time for resolution of consumer complaints is now at 93 days. This is a significant improvement from 2 years ago, which was at 225 days. So I want to express my gratitude to the Commission for approving the budget 2 years ago, which enabled us to hire staff. And this has led to great improvements in our resolution times, which benefits our license holders and the consumers that file those complaints. Concluding with our subject matter categories, there's been no significant changes or trends since my last report, and the 3 top categories have remained the same as sales other, licensure issues, and breach of fiduciary duties. Does anyone have any questions?
I do. Is there a standard process or checklist when investigating complaints?
We have an investigator manual, and they go through. It depends. They need to analyze what's necessary in order to collect the information. Our investigators, they're fact finders. They don't make any kind of decision making in regards to resolutions of the matter. Those are usually done by attorneys.
And what kind of internal oversight is there over the investigations?
Well, I mean, the attorneys, they review all those and they'll report any, issues they may have with certain investigators. They may have issues, and they'll report that to the chief investigator, who then, talks to me, and we determine if there's, needs to be some extra training or something like that.
Okay, I think as a commission, we need to look at these processes and we need to understand how these are being investigated. I've seen a lot of gaps lately, and we're harming the consumer, and we've got to get on it.
Okay. The enforcement has always been a process, and looking at the numbers, the number of complaints, the time it's been taken to resolve the complaint, we've looked at it as the full commission. We've looked at it at the workshop. We've looked at it at executive level. We've looked at enforcement level. Unfortunately, the enforcement is not a one-size-fits-all. And there are several factors in everything that happens in enforcement. And I would love to have a one-size-fits-all, but it's just not theoretically liable. You just can't do it, feasible. If you have specifics that I guess one of the things is when a complaint comes in, there are so many factors, and I can probably dig into any complaint there is, and I can probably Monday morning quarterback that, coulda, shoulda, might have, or whatever. And so I have no problem looking at the process. We've looked at the process. We've looked at the process time and time again, and we can certainly do it again. One of the things that I don't want to hand tie and limit enforcement from doing their job by very specific things. Years and years ago, when a complaint was opened, the first thing they did is they looked to see if your IABS was above the signature line or below the signature line. You know what? I think there's more important things to investigate than where my IABS is. And so I think we need to look at the process. We will look at the process, but yet at the same time, one size does not fit all. And that's what I think we have to realize when we look at these agreed orders and stuff, that they have a job to do, and they have their parameters, they have their matrix. But if we want to get very specific, are we looking at DBAs? Are we looking at alternative names? Are we looking at LLCs? Then yeah, let's get it to me, and we will certainly put something together to take a look at it.
That really didn't address what I'm talking about. We have a big problem with our criminal licensing, and we need to look at it.
Okay, and if you want to bring that up, we will certainly either look at it at executive, workshop it, or commission.
Thank you.
Yeah, any other questions? All right, great numbers as far as time frame. As a commissioner, my biggest worry is the second or third highest ranking one every month is breach of fiduciary duty. And that goes back to the very core of representing the consumers. And I think maybe, let's take that and maybe get with Summer and them and really hammer that, because that's always one of the highest ones. And so that concerns me.
Yeah.
Okay.
But just to let you know, those are the subject of the type of complaint. It
Right.
doesn't necessarily mean that we disciplined that, because there may not have been evidence or some of that. But the attorneys will look at it and be like, well, the overall theme of this or allegations dealt with, broker, related fiduciary issues. So
Very good.
thank
All
you
right,
very
any other
much.
questions, comments? All right, thank you.
See you in a bit.
All right, next up will be Tom Watson, Director of IT.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I'm Tom Watson, Director of Information Technology. On page 43, I want to focus a little bit on the top half of the report, which is website statistics. I typically don't talk too much about this, but what is shown here is that actually what we're seeing is a decrease of about 10% in the number of web pages that are being accessed by the outside, so public or license holders, whichever the case. Concurrently to that, though, what we're actually seeing is about a 10% increase in the number of sessions accessing the website, indicating that we're actually having more people, more visits to utilize the information or services on the website. They're getting it a little bit more effectively and efficiently, and then moving on. So it appears that the website is delivering content better than it did a year ago. And we're actually getting more visits either by choice or being driven to utilize those services on the website. On the lower half of the page are the online transactions, so those individuals that either submit an initial application or renewal through our online services. Those are remaining fairly stable and fairly strong, especially on the renewal side. Good participation in those areas. On page 44 is a graphical representation of those online transactions for both the initial applications and the renewal applications. If you notice, though, on the renewal applications, you see a dip there in April. And that dip appears to have come from business organizations, LLCs, corps, partnerships. There was actually a data error on this particular graph. So although it's representing a downward trend or for that particular month, in fact, it has been very and continues to be very stable at for corporations, about 98%. So that's an incorrect graphical representation. Are there any questions that I may answer? Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Renata Williams, Chief Financial Officer. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Kestner and Commissioners. Today I'll be presenting the June 2024 monthly financial report. Starting on page 45, we have the quarterly revenue analysis. As you can see, we've collected $11 million, which is 76.94% of our total revenue projection. As you'll also notice, we're slightly below our target. By the end of June, we should have been at 83.3% of our revenue, and we missed that mark. And I think we all kind of know why we've seen some dips. I think Commissioner Woodruff has mentioned it, Denise Sample has mentioned it with her report that she presented. We saw a dip in the sales agent original applications, and so our revenue is heavily dependent on the license fees. 90% of our revenue is derived from our license fees, so any deviation in that category has the ability to affect us. On page 46 is the quarterly expenditure analysis. We've spent approximately $14.2 million, which is 77% of our total projected expenditures. Again, we're slightly below our target of 83.3% of our projected expenditures for the end of June, but seeing how we have a decrease in our revenue collection, that's not necessarily a bad thing. On page 47, we have our RAMP budget update. We have $5.5 million in budgeted expenditures for this project. We've recognized $1.2 million of expenditure. And as a reminder, this is a multi-year capital expenditure project, and we anticipate having the bulk of the expenditures realized in FY25. And this project will continue through August 31st, 2028. Next, on page 48 is a year-over-year comparison, which shows our revenue and expenditures in the current year, 2024, and what those amounts were for in FY23 in the same month. We should expect to see higher expenditures throughout fiscal year 2024 as we continue with our RAMP project. Now we move to our investment holdings reports. These reports depict our ending balances in each portfolio, which is comprised of cash and U.S. Treasury notes. In the TREC operating account 3055, our ending balance was $17.7 million. We had $8.9 million in operating reserves, which left $8.7 million available fund balance for operations. On page 50 is the real estate recovery account 3058. We had $3.9 million as our ending balance, $495,464.79 reserved for potential payments within the next 90 days, and that left us with $3.4 million as the ending balance. Finally, on page 51 is account 3059. That's the real estate inspection recovery fund. Our ending balance was $462,535.04. There are no potential payments that are due within the next 90 days. And of course, as a result of the legislation changes from the 88th legislative session, the Inspector Recovery Fund is repealed, and so any remaining funds in that account will continue to remain in that account in accordance with the provisions of House Bill 1363 until it can be fully liquidated after September 30th, 2028. This concludes the Financial Services Division report. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Okay, and I know we will see you later this afternoon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next will be Summer Mandel, Government and Strategic Communications Director. Good morning, Summer.
Good morning. It's still the morning. So good morning, everyone. Chair Kesner and Commissioners. For the record, Summer Mandel, Government and Strategic Communications Director. So as you will see in your report, we have sent several e-newsletters since our last meeting. And this is a good point for me to address a technical glitch that we experienced last week that affected about a third of emails in our subscriber database. And so to be clear, this is in our email marketing platform called GovDelivery, which is separate, completely separate from our license holder database. And so in no way was anyone's license holder information affected at all. Everything is fine there. It really was just about unsubscribing people from certain topics or all topic types, and those topics are what we use to build the newsletter audiences. So there's usually a group of different audience types that are attached to things like TREC Advisor, Inspector Insight, all of that. So just to be clear, essential license related information comes from a different place entirely, so you don't have to worry about that. If you're still experiencing any issues with it, y'all or anyone in the audience or anyone who's listening, please just reach out to us so that we can look into it and make sure everything is set up appropriately. But it should be fixed, and we were able to resubscribe folks. Also, we didn't send any emails during that period, so you didn't miss out on any information. But what this issue highlighted for me, we got a lot of calls and emails where people wanted to know what was going on, and so I think that just means there's a lot of people who value the newsletters and the content that is in them, and so if we have a silver lining from this little snafu, I think that's what it is. So then we can take a look here with the subscribers, which I put on there for the first time. And this is, again, individuals who have signed up to receive these newsletters. A lot of people subscribe to more than one type of newsletter. Anyone can subscribe, so it's not just license holders. It could be the public. It could be people in other industries that are interested in the real estate industry. So you can see that the number of subscribers climbs up as we send newsletters, so that's really exciting. The numbers can fluctuate based on people who unsubscribe and also routine list maintenance to automatically remove undeliverable email addresses, or I guess technical glitches that occur could also unsubscribe you, but our subscriptions just keep growing, and particularly for Education Connection and Inspector Insight. And I attribute this growth to a few reasons. So we've been promoting subscribing to the newsletters, even cross-promotional in other newsletters or on social media. And for this, we created landing pages, which are specific URLs where people can go, and it says, you know, sign up for TREC Advisor. This gives you information about updates, things that are going on at the commission, and we've also clarified the email sign-up pop-up that comes to when you come to trec.texas.gov. So if you don't have a pop-up blocker on, what happens is a little rectangle pops up in the lower right corner that asks if you want to subscribe. And previously, it listed topics that you could subscribe to, like TREC updates or TREC rules. Instead, we've replaced those terms with the names of the newsletter. So TREC Advisor, Inspector Insight, Education Connection, and then for the board, the TALCB Bulletin. So the newsletters are a great way to push out information. As we can see, there's engagement though beyond just the data here on opens and click-through rates. So the past quarter, we saw it through a high volume of public comments that the two advisory committees received and requested. So as BRAC Chair Williams and BLC Co-Chair George shared earlier, they received hundreds of comments when they asked for feedback on some of the initiatives that they were actively considering. And so I think this is notable, this response, because it wasn't related to requesting public comment on rules that you've proposed or anything like that. This was really like early stages of discussions and planning, and so that gave people an opportunity to chime in now, and hopefully that means people are paying attention, and just is another way that we're committed to transparency in our communications and letting people know what's going on. Also in this report, you'll see some screenshots of recent videos that Sierra Pizarro, our communications specialist, has produced since we last met. One of the most popular videos on Facebook was actually from the Dallas Commission meeting, where we're opening up the walls because there were so many folks there in attendance and there weren't enough seats. So people enjoyed watching that too. You'll also see at the top there's a video that was just for staff that she produced from the June team building event. And then there are some screenshots from the 75th anniversary video series where we're highlighting it's our 75th anniversary, first of all, and we're highlighting some different staff members who've been around for a while, talking about how some things have changed over time. The last screenshot there at the bottom is footage for one of the video series Sierra is currently working on for the broker responsibility course for 2025-2026. And the broker responsibility course is another project that Sierra and I have been working on. in collaboration with Director Wheeler and her staff, as well as General Counsel Burgess and Deputy General Counsel Lee. And so with your approval of that content today, we will move on to the next steps of finalizing the design, proofreading, and just Sierra and I will continue to support the Education Division with whatever they need on that. So this concludes my report, and I can answer questions if you'd like.
Any questions? Questions, okay. Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move to agenda item 16. Agenda item 16 is consideration and possible action regarding the proposal for decision in the matter of SOA docket number 23924-12471 TREC versus Maritza Way Alba. Is there anyone here to speak on behalf of the respondent, Ms. Alba? Anyone here to speak on behalf of the respondent? Okay, Mr. Malloy with enforcement will present. Good morning again.
Good morning. So this case involves the revocation of a license. The commission had the burden of proof. The central issue was respondent's criminal history. So basically, on August 30th, 2022, the respondent pled guilty to the first-degree felony of aggravated assault against a security officer, and the offense was committed with a firearm. The respondent was sentenced to 8 years of community supervision. As part of our investigative process, the respondent failed to notify the commission within 30 days of the plea of guilty, which is required by statute. Additionally, when our investigation, we solicit information from these individuals, and she failed to fully respond or adequately respond to the investigation. So the judge determined that she did violate the License Act and determined that she violated sections 1101-652A1, which deals with having a felony, 1101-652A4, which deals with the failure to cooperate with the investigation, and 1101-652A7, which is the 30-day requirement to notify us of a plea of guilty to a felony offense. So based on the findings, the judge recommended revocation, and to these violations, they result in also administrative penalty, and a $1,500 administrative penalty was recommended as well. So staff recommends adoption and of this PFD, and that the license holder be revoked and assessed a $1,500 administrative penalty. The attorney that handled the matter is available for questions.
Any questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will go into executive session to discuss pending litigation, obtain legal advice, legal counsel on agenda items pursuant to the Texas Property Code 551.071 and a security audit pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.076 and 551.089. It is now 11:53. I am estimating 1 hour. So we will go ahead and adjourn back in at 1 o'clock just for simple math. I'm sorry, we're not adjourned. We're going into executive session. Going to get everyone good. Back from executive, we will go back to agenda item number 16, consideration and possible action regarding proposal for decision in the matter of SOA docket number 329-24-12471, TREC versus Maritza Alba. Commissioners, do y'all have, Director Malloy, do y'all have any other questions for Director Malloy concerning agenda item 16? Hearing none, the chair would entertain a motion.
I move to adopt the PFD as written.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Lerner, second by Commissioner Woodruff. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. We will go to agenda item number 18, and that is Abby Lee.
Good afternoon. Agenda item 18 is discussion and possible action to authorize settlement of recovery fund claims or take other action on RF 24003 Landon McDonald and Taylor McDonald versus G&M Realty Associates LLC, Gustavo Kwan, Roosevelt Mucker Jr., and Joshua Pedroso. You've received the details of this case under separate cover, but as a reminder, this claim involves a real estate agent who knew of property damage to a home his clients were purchasing, but failed to disclose the nature and extent of the damage and encouraged his clients to close without viewing the property. As a result, the staff recommendation is to authorize a settlement payment of $57,796.75 plus 8.25% in pre- and post-judgment interest on the actual damages awarded in the judgment of $37,548.50.
Would entertain a motion to approve? Have a motion by Commissioner Brown.
Second.
Commissioner Woodruff, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Okay, we will go to agenda item number 19, and someone might want to get a bottle of water for Abby. She might be up there for a while.
Very parched.
I'm just going to let you take it and run.
Thank you. All right, agenda item 19 is discussion and possible action to adopt amendments to 22 TAC 533.8, motion for rehearing. If you recall, this proposed change was brought to you in May as part of our quadrennial rule review. So this is now up for adoption for you. And it's correcting a typo made in subsection H of the rule. We did not receive any comments, and so the staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the commission to submit for adoption amendments to 22 TAC 533.8 as published to the Texas Register, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for adoption.
I have a motion made by Commissioner Brown, second Commissioner Harvey Lowe. Any discussion? All in favor? Say aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item number 20.
Agenda item 20 is discussion and possible action to adopt amendments to 22 TAC 534.4 Historically Underutilized Businesses Program and 534.7 the Vendor Protest Procedures. This is the second agenda item dealing with quadrennial rule review changes, and these amendments correct references to other applicable regulations in the Texas Administrative Code. Similarly, no comments were received on these proposed changes, and so the staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the commission to submit for adoption amendments to 22 TAC 534.4 and 534.7 as published to the Texas Register, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for adoption.
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Brown, second by Commissioner Woodruff.
Can I interrupt real quick?
Yes. We're in discussion.
Just for the, nothing on the rules, but if you could move to approve the staff recommendation, it just helps for the record. Thank you. Thank you.
Motion made by Commissioner Brown, second by Commissioner Woodruff. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item number 21.
Agenda item 21 is discussion and possible action to adopt amendments to 22 TAC 535.64 content requirements for qualifying education courses. You heard a little bit about this earlier in the ESAC report. The amendments reflect changes to the course approval forms incorporated by reference in subsections A1 through 3 of the rule related to principles of real estate 1, 2, and the law of agency courses. These course approval form revisions were recommended by ESAC, and these changes reorder and remove content from the course approval forms to ensure relevancy and that course objectives are being met. 2 comments were received from one commenter on the rule as published. The commenter raised concerns about changes to the course approval forms adopted by reference for principles 1 and 2. In particular, the commenter noted and ESAC discussed concerns about the changes and reduction of time in the math section of the course outline for for Principles 2. ESAC declined to make any changes, ultimately concluding that the outlines, including the order and the content of the topics, were well thought out by the working group, and that much of the concepts taught in real estate math would be tied to real estate financing, which is a separate topic in Principles 2 with 275 minutes specifically dedicated to it. The staff recommendation, therefore, is to authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to submit the proposed amendments to 22 TAC 535.64 and the forms adopted by reference, those course approval forms, as presented, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for for adoption to the Texas Register for publication and public comment.
Move to accept staff recommendation of amendments to 22 TAC 535.64.
Microphone.
Motion made by Commissioner Woodruff. Second by Commissioner Lerner. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item number 22.
Agenda item 22 is discussion and possible action to adopt amendments to 22 TAC 535.121, inactive sales agent license, 535.123, inactive broker status, and new 535.124, death of a designated broker. If you recall, the changes up for adoption today are the result of one of the Commission's 2024 initiatives regarding broker succession. So under the amendments and the new rule, the business entity and sponsored sales agents will be given a safe harbor or a grace period of 14 days from the designated broker's death before their licenses inactivate. This will provide the entity with time to name a new designated broker that satisfies these requirements prior to going inactive. The change also removes the word immediately from certain places in 535.121 and 535.123. We received a lot of comments on this one. We received 94 in total. The executive committee reviewed, and roughly 3/4 of those comments were in favor of the proposed change, supported it, but there were some specific comments that I will address here now. So 15 of the commenters wanted a named successor on file with TREC, or at least a required succession plan. The executive committee discussed this and noted that even if the commission were to implement something like that, because the act, the Real Estate License Act, requires the designated broker to be in good standing and to have managing authority, agency staff would still need to determine whether the named successor broker was qualified at the time of the designated broker's death, which would not place the entity or the sponsored sales agents or consumers in any better position than under the proposed changes. The committee also expressed concerns about changes in these situations. So relationships or business structures might have changed between the naming of the successor and the time of death. For instance, the person is no longer affiliated with the entity, that person is also deceased, etc. The committee stressed that from the commission's perspective and authority, this issue is less about having a replacement designated broker ready at the time of death and more about allowing sufficient time to process the changes without licensees becoming inactive and transactions stalling. The committee reiterated, however, the importance of succession planning, even if such planning is outside the jurisdiction of the committee and the commission. 14 commenters wanted a longer safe harbor period, with most requesting 30 days instead of 14. However, there was one commenter who wanted less than 14 days but did not specify an amount. The executive committee noted that the current turnaround time for agency staff to process a change in a designated broker is currently 3 to 5 business days, and that agency staff expedites this process for these changes when they're notified of a death anyway. The committee also noted that the commission considered the number of days to suggest as the safe harbor and arrived at 14 days after balancing giving the entity enough time to notify the agency with how much time a sales agent and an entity is without a designated broker. So this was a balancing act. 4 commenters had concerns about allowing a sales agent to have an active license for up to 14 days, sort of the same issue, without a designated broker for the entity. And so similar, the committee noted that while this is a risk of any safe harbor period, the benefit and consumer protection here outweighed any potential harm. Several commenters wanted the safe harbor to be expanded to cover additional situations. 3 commenters wanted these changes to be expanded to a broker who is incapacitated. The committee noted that the rule has never addressed this scenario and expressed concerns regarding how incapacity would be demonstrated by a broker or determined by the agency. Similarly, 2 commenters wanted to expand the safe harbor to a broker who goes inactive. The committee stated that this scenario does not have the same policy concerns as often a broker who goes inactive has planned to do so. Finally, 1 commenter wanted the safe harbor to be expanded to individual brokers who may or may not sponsor agents. The committee then noted, however, that in this situation is different for an individual broker. If an individual broker who sponsors sales agents passes away, then any sponsored sales agents will be required to find a new broker, which they can quickly do utilizing the online relationship management tool. In contrast, in the case of a designated broker, because the business entity still exists, then in most cases, the sponsored sales agents are not going to want to find a new broker and would not need to if a new designated broker is named. If individual broker passes away and does not sponsor sales agents, then there will not be any inactive sales agents unable to assist consumers in transactions, and although not a commission issue, any representation agreements in place may terminate anyway. 2 commenters requested the Commission provide more education on succession planning, and the committee noted that this topic will be included in the new broker responsibility course that you'll hear about a little bit later in the agenda. And then finally, 1 commenter asked whether a sole proprietor could currently name a successor with TREC. The committee said no, but that this could be accomplished by business planning, which is again separate from our jurisdiction, the Commission's jurisdiction. The staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to submit for adoption amendments to 22 TAC 535.121, 123, and new Rule 124 as published to the Texas Register, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for adoption.
Move to approve staff recommendation.
Have a motion to move to approve staff recommendation.
Second.
Commissioner Brown made the motion, Commissioner Woodruff second. Any discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, agenda item 23, discussion of possible action to adopt amendments 22 TAC chapter 535, subchapter R, Deputy Executive Director.
Good afternoon, Chair, Commissioners. I'm Deputy, for the record, Tony Slagle, Deputy Executive Director. I believe I'm up here to allow Abby to catch her breath. So I'm speaking on agenda item 23, discussion and possible action to adopt amendments to 22 TAC chapter 535 subchapter R as follows. Section 535-209 examinations, section 535-213 qualifying real estate inspector instructors and courses, and section 535-214 education and experience requirements for a license. The amendments to 22 TAC 535-209, 213, and 214 were published in the June 7th, 2024 issue of the Texas Register. The amendments, which primarily rearrange existing requirements, are being adopted to clarify that the Texas practicum is an experience requirement categorized by statute as fieldwork and is separate and apart from an educational course. Education providers can still offer the Texas practicum, but will no longer need to submit a course application for the practicum or issue course completion certificates to students. Instead, students will submit the credit request form to the agency to obtain credit. The Texas Real Estate Inspector Committee recommended the amendments. One commenter expressed concern that the changes are inconsistent with applicable law, the Sunset Advisory Commission's 2019 report, antitrust standards, and that the changes as proposed create a barrier to entry by not allowing the practicum to be taught by video. Please note that in addition to that initial comment from Mr. Harbuck, we did receive 2 subsequent comments from him on this rule, and those comments should be on your surface as well. The Inspector Committee discussed this comment with agency staff and general counsel and does not share the concerns. Additionally, with regard to the concern raised that the changes create a barrier to entry, the committee believes that this will have the opposite effect because this will result in a cost saving for education providers offering the practicum and potentially to students, since providers won't be required to have the practicum approved by the commission, which comes with associated fees that are often passed down to students. Furthermore, the only time the commission allowed for a video or virtual component to the practicum was during COVID. This temporary allowance ended in August of 2022. Another commenter appeared to be in support of keeping the practicum as a course. However, for the reasons stated above, the committee declined to make any further changes based on either comment. The committee did, however, recommend changes to Section 535-214 H1BI to add a clarifying statement that the inspections required for the practicum must also include preparation of inspection reports by the applicant. And the staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the commission to submit for adoption amendments to 22 TAC 535-209, 535-213, and 535-214 as presented to the Texas Register, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for adoption.
I move that the commission accepts staff's recommendation.
Motion made by Commissioner Lerner to approve staff's recommendation. Got a second, Commissioner Russell. Discussion. I'll just say the comments. I think video training is incredible. I think virtual training is incredible. But when it comes to an inspection, I've been through too many of them where I just don't think you can video an inspection and do it right. I'm sorry. There's just too many things that you might see a stain, you might smell something, it might lead to this. And so currently, the person providing the training has to have 200 inspections, and then the person getting the license has to have 5 inspections or 40 hours.
They do 5 inspections.
Yeah, in person. And so I don't think that's a barrier. I think that's consumer protection when you still make them go in the property. So I love the change. I think it'll help protect the consumer and help get more thorough inspectors out there. Any other comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello again.
Hello again.
Agenda item 25.
This
Yes,
is my last one,
25.
I promise. Agenda item 25 is discussion and possible action to conclude the review of 22 TAC Chapters 531, Canons of Professional Ethics and Conduct, Chapter 533, Practice and Procedure, Chapter 534, General Administration, and Chapter 541, Rules Relating to the Provision of Texas Occupations Code, Chapter 53. After review of these chapters, staff has determined that the reason justification for adopting the rules within these chapters continues to exist. Furthermore, the review process indicated that certain rules needed to be amended for clarity or to better reflect applicable law, policies, or procedures. You adopted those changes earlier today. No comments were received regarding the Commission's notice of review of these chapters. Therefore, the staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to close the review of 22 TAC Chapters 531, 533, 534, and 541 as presented.
Entertain a motion.
Move to that we approve the staff's recommendation.
Motion made by Commissioner Lerner. Second, Commissioner Woodruff. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Thank you. Agenda item number 26, Executive Director Chelsea Buckholz.
I think we should just have Abby do the rest, don't you think? Okay, agenda item 26 relates to yet another conversation about a move. At your last commission meeting, you accepted an assignment for TREC to move to office space in fiscal year 2028. This assignment was at Lavaca and 15th Street. It was 1501 Lavaca. Not long after you accepted that assignment, I received a call from the Facilities Commission asking if we would consider changing our assignment from 1501 Lavaca to 1500 Congress, next door. This change means that we have a whole floor, second floor of a new building dedicated to TREC. We'd be closer to the Capitol and on the new Capitol Mall. We would have a dedicated space for commission and board meetings. That's just ours. I haven't determined a downside to this request, except that the cost would be slightly higher from our previous assignment, but still a savings to what we currently pay. So because your previous decision at my direction was so specific to location, I am before you again today asking, and I'm going to recommend that we go with a little bit of a broader approach this time. So essentially, I recommend that you authorize me as Executive Director to enter into an agreement with the Texas Facilities Commission regarding our relocation into office space related to the state's Capitol Complex Phase 2. I will pause there to say there are only 2 buildings being built. It's the one we were first assigned, and it's the other building that we are now being assigned. So there is flexibility, but we think we're set now at 1500 Congress. So I just recommend that you authorize me to enter into those agreements so that we can move forward with what I think will be some really lovely space.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we authorize the executive director to look at the additional space.
I still have the same concern I had last time.
Let me give the motion first.
Oh, okay.
Motion made by Commissioner Hargrave, second by Commissioner Brown. Discussion, Commissioner Lerner.
I still have the same concern I had last time. This is 2028. What if the way we work changes again and we're in this smaller space? The legislature may change how we work. Who knows who's going to be in here? And I'm just scared that we're not going to have enough space.
I think that makes perfect sense, and I share that concern really, and I have a hard time figuring out kind of what approach to take. Do you take the information you have today and move forward with confidence, or do you kind of stay paused, not knowing what the future holds? If today the legislature said you all need to be in the office every day, we currently would not have space to do that. We have outgrown this space. So what that conundrum would be the same regardless. I do think that if that were the case, we would simply seek more space elsewhere. We're not buying the space. We would literally just be a tenant. So we would talk to the Texas Facilities Commission and say, we need more space. How can we make it happen?
Other discussion?
So is there any room to request more square footage from the Facilities Commission?
Maybe. It's an interesting process of where they basically ask your needs, and it's based on today and where you think you'll be in 2028, and then they estimate what your square footage will be. So we could say, can we have more square footage? And I don't know what their answer would be, but I'm not certain. You know, I'd like us to make decisions today that make sense for who we are today and who we think we will be in the future. And I have kind of worried, you know, as the executive director, should I ask for a whole lot more space just in case? But that doesn't seem financially conservative. If I don't think that's where we're going, if that's really just a fear-based decision, I don't think we're going to need it. And we will have some wiggle room. I mean, I haven't, in our estimations, I have estimated for some growth and have kind of just created a little bit of a buffer to the extent that I could.
I think there's maybe not equal, but some risk associated with, hey, you may not need as much as you have, because if you look at how the remote work process has, you know, continued to grow, that could happen too. So, you know, I mean, I think looking at what you're imagining today, based on today, a little bit of extra wiggle room, along with, you know, hey, if you do need more, I'm sure that, you know, the facility folks, you know, would be able to talk to you about that. I mean, it just doesn't seem to me like it's worth, given the facts on the ground here right now, worth the additional investment just for insurance on that.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to be with Commissioner Woodruff. I think what happens in 28 if we have too much space. And again, this is the Facilities Commission reached out to us, said, hey, we have this option. It gives us the ability to design it the way enforcement, education, licensing can all be together, and it's a great opportunity. And I think it's a great opportunity for the agency. And I guess my only question is it the white crane or the green crane? You know, which one is it that's putting it together?
The one closest to where we are today.
Okay, very good. All right, other discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we are moving to agenda item 27.
Are you okay if we do 28 first?
Yes, I'm sorry.
That'll keep Renata and I from dancing back and forth.
Very good.
We're not opposed to dancing, but you know. Okay, this is agenda item 28 is discussion and possible action to amend the TREC TALCB MOU for 2024 and 25. So beginning on page 379 of your materials, you'll see draft changes to the MOU between the board and the commission to reflect the absorption of duties by 2 staff members upon the passing of one of our board staff, Dion Frederick, the TALCB recording secretary. So 2 staff will take on her duties at 30% of their time each on the board side, compared to the 1 recording secretary position allocated to TALCB at 40%. So it will mean a higher cost for the board, a lower cost for TREC, which will more accurately reflect the estimated time spent on board functions. So I recommend that you approve the changes to the MOU as presented.
Okay, and just on your note, it says it's a 2-year renewal. It is a 1-year renewal. It's in 27. All right, we're good. Move.
Motion to move the recommendation to amend the MOU for 1 year.
Motion made by Commissioner Woodruff, second Commissioner Pena. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Now agenda item 27.
Good afternoon. Agenda item 27 is discussion and possible action regarding the renewal of the Regulatory Applications Modernization Project contract for a 1-year term. I know that says a 2-year term, but it's for a 1-year term. Our initial contract with our ramp vendor ends on August the 31st, 2024. Since we are still in the middle of the implementation phase, we are requesting your approval to enter the renewal option to extend the contract. This will be accomplished by a purchase order change notice. The current term of the contract allows for the contract to be renewed for up to 3 additional 1-year terms. So due to the value of the contract, staff recommendation is to authorize the renewal of the Regulatory Applications Modernization Project contract for a 1-year term as presented.
Motion to approve staff recommendation. Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Pena, second by Commissioner Brown. Any discussion? All in favor?
Renata, just real quick, there hasn't been any change orders, right? No contract modifications or scope amendments?
We've had 1 change order that I don't know if it's even complete yet. Do you know if it's completed? I think we're still in the middle of negotiating that, but it was 1 change order so far for, I believe, $28,000. Okay. But we're still within budget for that particular project.
Well, within the threshold of...
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries.
I'm sorry. Sorry, correction. That was $24,000 for that change order. I had it right here. Just didn't look at it.
Agenda item 29.
All right, agenda item 29, discussion and possible action regarding the FY 2025 Budget and Financial Administration Policy, the FY 2025 Investment Policy, and the FY 2025 budget. Okay. All right. The Budget and Financial Administration Policy, as well as the Investment Policy, were sent to you under separate cover. The Budget and Financial Administration Policy have been updated to correct grammatical errors, update language to align with current practices regarding our salary guides and our job classification. In addition, the Operation and Contingency Reserve was decreased from 6 months to 3 months, and language added to Section 107C, which further clarifies when adjustments should be made to the reserve levels. The investment policy was also updated, again, to correct any grammatical errors, update language to reflect the decrease in the operation and contingency reserve from 6 months to 3 months, and language added to reflect the reserve that we have for the statutorily required GR payment. So these changes are nothing new that were presented back in May. It's just, we're presenting them again as a full budget item. And then lastly, I want to go into the actual FY 2025 budget. So the second draft of the budget, again, that was also included in under separate cover for your materials. And within that budget document, you're going to see two drafts. One draft that depicts our current financial situation with a now 3-month reserve. That's the one that's going to be up for adoption. The second version is presented for illustration purposes only, and it depicts what our financial situation could be if we're able to proceed with the 3-month reserve and a small fee increase. Again, that's not for adoption since we don't know if we can proceed with the fee increase yet. That's with the Office of the Governor. Some of the highlights I wanted to speak to are we are projecting lower revenue projections in FY 25 through 27. I think we've had some discussion about that already, but as you know, our revenue is highly dependent upon revenue generated through our license fees. And our data is showing a decrease or a slowdown in the amount of applicants for new sales agents. And so as we continue to watch what happens with the market, we'll also refine our revenue projections as we proceed throughout the year. Conversely, our expenditures, we will see the bulk of the ramp-related expenditures next fiscal year, along with a few other capital expenditures, such as for our website redesign, mailroom equipment, and server replacement equipment. We will see a decrease in our expenses starting in 26 and 27, but as you can see, they're still projected to be more than our revenue collection. In regards to staffing, there is a small change, as Executive Director Buckholz just mentioned, which was just approved with the MOU. And the TREC FTE count has decreased by 1.20 FTEs, and this is a result of those two positions now being cost share positions with TLCB. So we have a slight decrease that we'll see in our salary and wages and other personnel costs for about $20,400. And additionally, within those documents that I presented to you, there's a summary page at the end that kind of gives you a brief overview of what you're looking at on each page in case you had any questions for me.
So I looked at the revenue, one of the, when projecting revenue, you look at your license counts, and for the most part, they have remained flat, right? Mm-hmm. Meaning that although we have decreases in applicants, and the renewal rate is down somewhat, it's still offsetting the amount of the new, offset it by the new applicants that are coming in. So in effect, we have no net decrease in the number of licenses. As a matter of fact, this time last August, we were up by 1,000 some licensees compared to June, right? And so when you're looking at revenue based on that membership base, you're currently predicting $1 million less than what we budgeted for, or what is projected to be actual in the current year. And so when I look at that, and also, if I recall from your financial report, we were 7% behind at 77% versus the 83. So I kind of see where you're going. I think that projected 4.8 that you have on page 10 may be a little high as well, as actual ending in FY 2024. We may end up in the 13.5 middles. And I think that's where the big difference is that I was kind of caught on. That 1 million differences may not be 1 million. It's more like in the $500,000. But definitely, from my experience with data, it doesn't move that drastically over time. Usually those shifts are kind of stepped down very gradually, as opposed to a wild $1 million swing. So is this the final, I mean, we're approving the budget today, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and so that's fine. I'm okay with that.
Thank you, sir, for your feedback and information.
So in broker terms, you think we're going to make more money than this budget is allocating in brokers terms, not CPA terms?
I look at it in CPA terms, I'm sorry.
You only speak CPA.
Trilingual. Okay, any other questions on the proposed budget? And I hope you're right.
Me too.
All right, all in favor? Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're also approving the investment policy.
Right, the investment policy.
I don't know if we had a motion.
Oh, no, we went to. Let me have a motion, and we'll go back to the discussion.
Motion to approve the budget, the proposed FY 2025 budget as presented.
Motion made by Commissioner Pena, second by Commissioner Harvey Lowe. We've had discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries.
Thank you.
We need the approval,
Then we need the audit,
the investment
the
policy.
investment policy.
Motion to approve the investment policy as presented.
Motion to approve investment policy by Commissioner Pena, second Commissioner Woodruff. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Okay. Yes. Did we do all three?
Maybe we didn't do the budget and
investment-
financial
financial-
administration policy. Did we do
Okay.
that one? That
Nope.
we missed that?
I need the fiscal financial administration policy.
I move that we adopt the budget financial administration policy as proposed.
Made by Commissioner Woodruff, second by Commissioner Pena. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item 33.
Thank you.
We've been all over the place today. Good afternoon, Jennifer Wheeler, Director of Education and Exams. Agenda item 33 is discussion and possible action to approve the broker responsibility course materials for the 2025-2026 course book. These materials were sent to you under separate cover, and as a reminder, what you have before you is the content of the course. We are currently working on the development of the formatting, the creation of the PowerPoint, the corresponding instructor materials, and those sorts of things. I'm really proud of the work that has been done on this course. Many thanks to Jennifer Gruby, Ray, Vanessa, Abby, Summer, and Sierra. Developing these course materials is a heavy lift, and everyone who is a part of the development is crucial to the process. And with that, staff recommendation is to approve the 2025-2026 broker responsibility course materials, along with any technical or non-substantive changes.
Made by Commissioner Brown, second by Commissioner Harvey Lowe. Any discussion? I just want to say, like Legal 1, Legal 2, y'all do an awesome job putting this stuff together. You really do. And I'm pretty excited about, I think the instructors are going to include Avis and John George. Is that correct?
That's right.
So
That's
looking
right.
forward to that.
Start that in the fall.
All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, any abstaining, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 34, discussion and possible action regarding topics for the November workshop. As usual, we will do the annual training in November. Any other discussion on workshop topics in November?
Enforcement.
Okay. We will make enforcement a topic in November. And for those participating for the first time, a lot of times we will have a commission meeting, then the next day we will have a workshop talking about very specific things. November is always training, and then we've talked about, you know, priorities at the legislature and different education. And so this workshop will focus on the November annual training, and then we'll bring in enforcement part of it also. And that is also open to the public. There is no CE, but it is open to the public. And I see General Counsel Vanessa has her microphone up. That's never a good sign.
No, it's
Yes,
great.
ma'am.
Okay, so we'll do annual training. There'll likely be some other stuff on there. I would imagine an initiatives wrap up, something along those lines. But when it comes to enforcement, just so that we know what to prepare, are we thinking an overview of the process followed by some specifics, or how would you like to see that formatted so that way we can prepare it?
I would like to see the investigative process, and especially when it refers to criminal licensing.
Okay, so as I understand it, I'm looking at Mike. You mean how the process works for the criminal background checks, not the actual, there's been a complaint against somebody for brokerage activity, what's that investigative process, or do you want both?
I want to know their procedures of how they dig for information to understand the person's background before they issue an order.
For criminal history?
Yes.
So not so much on the sort of the everyday Trella complaints? Okay, so really on criminal history, background checks, and that process for looking into them?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Agenda item 35, future meetings. I think there was some dates in your book.
4th and 5th, 10th and 11th of February.
Yeah, February 10th and 11th, and then May 5th and 6th. And then, of course, November is the 4th and 5th. It really disappoints me we will not be meeting on Valentine's Day this year. It's always a good place to bring your date. That's right.
Yeah, we had several years it was kind of.
Yeah, we had several years, and last year on Valentine's is where we introduced a new rule that if you break up with your broker and your CE is more than 2 years old, you're inactive. Yeah. So find the new boyfriend before you break up with the old boyfriend kind of philosophy.
And send them a box of chocolates.
And send a box of chocolates. All right. I'd love a motion. I'd love a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? We're out of here at 1:46 p.m.